am loved. I am safe. Like maybe someone wasn't always there for me when I need them to be consistently, but I can give myself consistent love right now. And it's a very powerful message to know that you can do this for yourself.
So I'm so excited to be here with Kaylee Larkin, who is an attachment coach, and she is someone who's just helped a lot of people to create more fulfilling connections in their lives, and she specializes in helping people with insecure attachment style. So we're going to learn all about what that is, so that people can build more secure, loving relationships with others and with themselves. So, hi, Kaylee.
Hi, Jess. It's great to be here. Thank you so much for having me on.
Yeah. Well, let's just dive right in. So, first, just kind of why is it important to understand attachment styles? So, what does that have to do with relationships?
Yeah, for sure. That is such a great question. And some people here may have heard of attachment styles, some people may not have. So I know people are coming from different places. It's much more talked about than it was just even a few years ago, which is amazing because for me, learning about attachment styles was like, Jess, have you ever watched one of those 3D movies where you have to wear the glasses? Yeah. So have you ever taken them off in the middle of the movie?
Yes.
And you know how it gets kind of blurry and confusing.
Yeah.
That's what relationships were like for me before I learned about attachment style. And so it was like literally someone had handed me one of these pairs of glasses. I put it on and everything was so much more clear. And it was like I'd been watching this movie the whole time without them. So understanding attachment styles helped me so much just to understand relationships, my relationships, my friends' relationships. That's how it all started, was just really a lot more understanding, a lot more clarity. And I find a lot of people have that experience where they learn about the system and they're like, wow, this is completely life changing for me. I totally get now these dynamics that have been happening in my relationship for years, maybe, or relationships for years.
Wow. So that's such a great metaphor of like putting these glasses on and suddenly understanding so much. I mean, so where do you begin? I mean, can you share some signs of different attachment styles?
Yeah, absolutely. So the concept of attachment, first of all, it has to do with the bond that's happening between people, that kind of emotional connective bond that happens between us. And so attachment style is something that develops over time, but it starts way back, early childhood, actually, even the womb. And the way that it presents in adult relationships, because our attachment style stays with us, like it starts way back then and it just keeps on going up until the present. It can change over time, but the way that it might show up for people is they're in a relationship and they're having struggles and they notice like, oh my gosh, there's this one thing that always happens. Like maybe it's something like they're in a relationship and whenever they get into a conflict with their partner, they are the ones who want to talk it out. They're the ones who want to come together to connect, to understand each other, to get figured out, to repair, and their partner does not. Maybe that's the pattern where like they're always the ones who are in, who are like wanting to connect, and their partner's always out. They're always the ones who are like, I don't want to deal with this. I don't want to talk about this. Can we talk about this later? I'm tired, and there's that constant kind of like a dual way of thinking about how to solve problems or how to figure out problems in relationship. So it might be something like that. It could also be something like somebody is dating and they just have a lot of sort of anxiousness come up around the process of dating. Like as people are naturally getting to know each other and they're waiting for, say, a message back from somebody, and that message doesn't come as quickly as they're comfortable with. So maybe instead of hearing back from someone, they reach out to somebody and they're hoping to hear back, within 5 minutes or even an hour. Maybe it takes a few hours or maybe even takes a day. And they start just feeling all of these like feelings of not just kind of anxiety, but like worry and concern. And what does this mean? And just kind of can snowball like that. So sometimes it's around that kind of anxiousness that can come up for us when we're dating, but it can present all kinds of different ways for people.
Wow, that's so interesting. I mean, I definitely experienced that where it's like, oh my God, I haven't heard. I hope there's nothing wrong. There's nothing. So how does someone start to work on this? I mean, do they work on it in those individual instances, or is it more just kind of overall?
Yeah, that's a great question. So, yes and yes. And by working on it overall, they can start to work on it in those little instances. So, for example, let's go back to one of those examples we just talked about. Say, say they're waiting for that text and it's just not coming, and that's really stressing them out. So if we that's like zoomed in, they're staring at the screen and they're like, oh my gosh, where is it? If we just kind of zoom out, like say you just imagine just that text getting smaller and smaller, we're zooming out, looking back at that whole perspective, and you see their life. This probably isn't the only time that that's ever happened. Probably they've had other instances and other times where they were waiting to hear back from somebody and it was stressful. And so we can know, okay, this is probably a pattern that's happened over time with this particular attachment style. That would be the anxious attachment style might experience that problem, for example. And so we can start to kind of ask the question, okay, how could we change this overall pattern of like stress around someone not being available? And like, what's even causing the stress around someone not being available? Like, why is it so stressful, say, for this person to not hear back right away, whereas their friends might not hear back for an hour and just not care? And so we can start to begin to think about, okay, like how could we approach this from a way that's going to like take care of this problem in a more like across the big picture of someone's life.
Wow, so interesting. So you start to delve into the whys underneath it all. And then there's probably some tools or practices.
Yeah, absolutely there are. So, and they're going to differ for each attachment style. So, for example, for an anxious attachment style, they're dealing a lot with this kind of there's an underlying fear of loss or abandonment or rejection that can be around this, like, oh my gosh, why hasn't this person gotten back to me? This is one example. So, this underlying feeling of like, is this person going to go away? Is this relationship going to last? And that can be really triggering for people because it's taking us back to how the attachment styles developed and started in the first place, which is if somebody is with the anxious attachment style, maybe their caregiver wasn't always consistently available. Maybe they gave them a lot of love or, some attention. But it was like, up and down. Sometimes they were there, sometimes they weren't there. And it just wasn't something the person could really go, oh, yeah, like that is consistency. And so when we start to think about how could we change this, how could we change this pattern so that this person is no longer feeling this like kind of intense stress around not hearing back, we think about, okay, how can we help someone to feel more consistently secure? And one of the ways we do that is by giving ourselves these kind of experiences of knowing that we're loved, knowing that we're safe, even though we're not getting a message back right now. So we can take this message of like, I am loved, I am safe. Like maybe, someone wasn't always there for me when I need them to be consistently, but I can give myself consistent love right now. And it's a very powerful message to know that you can do this for yourself. And people, when they start putting these kind of practices into effect, they tend to notice a lot of shifts and changes as they are maybe experiencing how to give themselves love the first time. And there are a lot of other practices too, of course, that somebody could do to, start that process of rewiring their attachment system. People could focus on building their self-esteem or becoming more confident or learning how to give compassion to themselves or learning how to give compassion to other people. Those are all super valuable things for people to do for the attachment system in general. especially for the anxious attachment system.
Yeah, this it's so interesting as a yoga teacher, of course, that comes into play a lot. This idea that we can turn, what I call nurturing energy inward. And it sounds like, at least some of these styles, there's almost a sense of, you make me whole. And so that fear of loss would leave me not whole if you disappeared. And that's where that anxiety would come from. So how can we connect to our wholeness, no matter what the other person in the relationship is doing?
Yeah, I love that, Jess. And it's funny, I've always felt like the time that I've spent in yoga classes where it felt like the person was doing more than just yoga. Like, and you probably work this way with people when you teach them how to do yoga, or you teach people how to practice these things, is like it feels like sometimes people are really healing themselves or healing each other in these classes, or helping kind of facilitate that process of healing. And you're right, it's like a lot of it is this feeling of wholeness, this feeling of I'm okay, even if out there is a little messy or people aren't responding the way I want them to respond. Oh, hi, puppy.
That's Desi.
Even if that's happening, I'm okay. And just knowing that and knowing how to give yourself that is so helpful for the attachment system and so helpful for healing in general. And I know the work that you do is just really amazing for helping people heal their bodies. And, you help these women who are in the prenatal process. It's really beautiful work. Um, and yeah, so much around like wholeness and feeling okay, feeling good in our bodies, feeling good with who we are. All of that is so good for the attachment system.
Yeah, so interesting. And yeah, I always recommend that we combine the yoga with, either therapy or like a coach like you, or someone where we can put words to it, where we can articulate it, and like, because that's part of becoming more aware of our patterns. And we have some that are just in our bodies, I think, that we also need to shift. So the combination, I think, is very healing. I guess, do you have any other things you want to share about the different attachment styles, or ways to kind of discover what yours is?
Yeah, absolutely. So there's four different attachment styles. People here may or may not be familiar with all four because sometimes we only hear about three of them. So there's the secure attachment style, and they all have kind of different names. And just a little heads up, they sound a little bit judgy. So just know that these names are really helping us just understand the patterns, and we can break free of these kind of like the judginess of it and just, give ourselves love and compassion around it. So secure attachment, there's the anxious attachment style. Sometimes it's called preoccupied, just kind of the idea that people are preoccupied with preoccupied with external love, preoccupied with making sure that the relationship is stable and certain and going to be there. And that might look like, anxiousness around messaging back and forth, or it might be like wondering when the person's going to reach out, or it might be feeling like, oh my gosh, we need to get this sorted out like right now. I can't wait to figure this out with you. I need to sort it out like right this second. Um, it could be, like a little lower confidence or lower self-esteem. There's like different ways that this can manifest both in relationships and out in the world. It's kind of interesting that way. And then the other attachment style, there's one called avoidant, sometimes dismissive avoidant. And that really has to do with kind of like an independent, self-sufficient attitude towards life and relationships. And so in that attachment style, in the avoidant attachment style, people really weren't given a really deep, loving, relational sort of holding space when they were younger. They were really encouraged to be their own strong individual person and to take care of problems themselves. And also that kind of meant, unfortunately, that they had to take care of their emotional upsets themselves when they were younger. And so that tends to have a lot of self-sufficiency, a lot of kind of proud independence, which is great for so many things in life. A lot of these attachment styles, like I said, it can sound a little judgy or whatever, but they all give us strengths. And it's just amazing how much, it can help someone who's very independent in other areas. And at the same time, they might kind of be struggling relationally. So in the avoidance style, they didn't they may have gotten very consistent connection, unlike the anxious style, but it might have been not as loving, or maybe it was kind of critical or even very critical. And so the way that that shows up is people might have a hard time receiving criticism. They might have a hard time opening up about their feelings because they really weren't ever taught how to have a safe space to be open about their feelings. Vulnerability just wasn't taught, or it was kind of scary. And so that one, it's kind of like the classic Hollywood romance movie where one person's chasing and the other person's pulling away. If you had an anxious person and an avoidant person in a relationship, kind of look like one of those rom-coms. Yeah, you know what I'm talking about. So,
Yeah.
yeah. And then there's the last style, sometimes called disorganized or fearful, avoidant or fearful. And that style can go either way. It can go a little anxious, it can go a little avoidant, um, or it can kind of swing back and forth. But underlying that, there's a lot of kind of insecurity, not feeling safe in the world, feeling a little, maybe there's some trauma or background stuff to work through. And so they can just have a really hard time feeling okay and feeling like they're able to kind of calm themselves down to, we call it self-regulation. Like if you have trouble calming down after a fight for a really long time, like maybe you go days or weeks and you're still thinking about it and stressing out about it. And also, it's kind of important to realize that we don't just have one attachment style. So we have multiple attachment styles, or kind of different percentages of attachment styles that make up our attachment mix or our attachment makeup. So somebody can have like a little bit of each one. But yeah, the fact is we can all develop more security, more secure attachment style by first learning about it, really focusing on the different patterns that we have. We can learn about how the attachment styles interact. So what are the different dynamics? And we can also start to find ways to support ourselves. And like in the work that I do with people, I do a lot of visualization. I work with the subconscious. I help people to develop the resources that they may not be fully aware of, or just learn how to access them more easily and more fluidly on their own. So, for example, if someone's like, yeah, I feel this really big stress and I'm not sure how to calm down. So then we work on the self-soothing piece. Or if they're like, wow, like I'm just constantly thinking about this person, I can't get them out of my head, work on self-soothing. We also work on self-connection, because sometimes when we're like obsessing about somebody else, it means that we've kind of lost connection with ourselves. So I use something called dynamic attachment repatterning, which is a somatic body-based process. And it really helps people to connect with their resources, connect with feelings of love and feelings of safety and security and connection, and helps kind of rewire for secure attachment. And then I use a lot of processes around visualization and neuroscience based techniques to help people to rewire in these ways of being. So, yeah.
What are some resources that you might have available for people who want to learn more about this?
Yeah, great. Thank you for asking. So I have a couple of things to offer. I have a blog where I'm constantly putting out articles on attachment style and relationships. If you do a web search for Secure Attachment Rewire, Kaylee Larkin, you'll come across my blog, my website with my blog on it. I also have a free download that you can get. It's 10 ways to build secure attachment and a fulfilling relationship. And there's one for each style. So if you go to my website at kayleelarkin.com, you can find they're like long guides that walk you through these different things that you can do on a daily basis to really start to rewire in some new ways of being in the world and in relationships. And if you're curious about this, I'll be teaching an upcoming workshop on visualizing for secure attachment. So I'll post a link to that somewhere around this video.
Oh, excellent. And then also just working with you one-on-one, that's available as well, I see.
Yes, that's available as well. You can reach out to me on my blog, or sorry, on my website. You can reach out to me on their website for one-on-one coaching. And yeah, happy to talk with you about how I can help you feel more security and more joy in your relationships.
Wow, well, this is really fascinating. I really did not know anything about these. So thank you so much for sharing about this. And for those of you out there who want to know more about Kaylee Larkin, you can go to her website. And also, I have this bio, and I'll just share that she has a lot of certifications, certificates in dynamic attachment repatterning, clinical hypnotherapy, havening techniques, generative trance, and teaching, with additional training in Eastern and Western meditation and mindfulness practices, neurolinguistic programming, compassionate communication, and more. So, yeah, you will be in good hands if you work with her.
Thanks so much, Jess. And yeah, I really appreciate again taking the time to connect and just yeah, really appreciate the work that you're doing in the world around helping people with their bodies and alignment and yoga and all these things. So yeah, thank you so much.
Thank you so much. So we were just talking after the interview, and I shared something that was really getting to me. And Kaylee mentioned like a practice that she does sometimes if she feels like, she's upset, but she can't actually work it out with the other person. So we thought we'd do it on camera. So here we go.
All right. All right, Jess. So just take a moment to, and you're a yoga teacher, so you are excellent at connecting with your body. Just take a moment to go internal and just noticing the floor, the mat underneath you, your breath, the awareness of the breath, and just getting comfortable in whatever way you need to get comfortable. I think you got your puppy there with you.
Yes, I'm trying to put my phone on silent right now. Okay.
And you said that there was something that's kind of been on your heart. And so just taking a moment to connect with that, giving that a little bit of space and letting yourself have a little compassion, just making room for it, welcoming that in. And now really tuning into that kind of higher self, compassionate self, the wise version of yourself. And maybe this is the part of you that's really great at kind of being there for a friend when they're in need, or is really great at just like giving some solid wisdom, just tuning into that part of yourself that's the wiser, compassionate part of you. And just nod your head when you're there. Great. And now just extending some of that compassionate care to that part of you that's struggling with this situation. So just taking a moment to extend some compassion, some love. And for some people, it helps to just kind of take their hands, put them on their heart, or for other people, you just send that energy out to that part of you, whatever works for you. Yeah, that's it. Just sending some love, sending some compassion, sending some energy to that you there that's struggling with that thing. Just letting yourself send out some love. And you can say in your mind some words of empathy if you like, I understand why you're feeling this way or that way, just in your mind to yourself. I understand how you're feeling, like X, Y, or Z. Just taking a moment to do that for yourself. And just give a little nod when you're done with that part. Okay. And also just acknowledging the needs that you there has. So I totally understand that you were needing fill in the blank, whatever you were needing. So taking a moment in your own mind to just give yourself the validation, understand that you were needing. Okay. And now again, just sending out just a beam of love to that part of you. Just a beam of acceptance, of care, compassion. And breathe. Great. When you're ready, just coming on back. Okay.
Wow, that's really interesting. I felt like I had this whole conversation, so I imagined that part of me that was dealing with this issue as or I sort of was open to like, who are you? How old are you? And it was like this really obnoxious teenager. And
Yeah.
I said, what do you need? And she said, I want her to apologize. And I was like, I don't think that's going to happen, but I am sorry that you had to go through that. And
Yeah.
I am sorry that you are feeling this way. It was really almost as good.
Yeah. That's
I mean, it felt
beautiful.
like a lot of it got that feeling of unresolvedness. It was like I got a far, I made a lot of progress.
Yeah. That's beautiful because so often we want the other person to change. We want the other person to do something or we want it to be different. And some things just aren't changeable or they're just not different. Like people could be grieving X, Y, or Z. Like we could have all kinds of things going on out there in the world that we have no control over. And so being able to do what you did just now and just give compassion around it and just hang out in this moment and give yourself love in this moment, that's such a powerful practice. So thank you for going
Thank you
along on
so
that
much.
journey
That
with
was
me.
really helpful.